co-host, the I think my personal storyteller. It's Tom. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, friends.
You're here to be the bard, to sing the tales of my particular ups and downs, successes and failings. I think that's your role here.
That may not go how you would like it to go.
We don't get to choose how our stories are remembered, Tom. I am accepting this.
Indeed.
Also joining us this week, I'm very happy to have back on the show. It's Doug from 2+ Tough. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Sir, it is an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show. And we are going to be digging into the story of AoS 2, as I'm sure hopefully everybody knows at this point. This big book.
It's a big book.
It's a big, heavy book that, as we commented before the show, smells so glorious. It's a unique smell. This big book has like none of this is rules, which I love, by the way. I don't mean that like probably that much of it realistically, like maybe that is like the rules I'm ever going to use out of this book, right?
Yeah.
And then like this is the story.
Yep.
And well, let's call it fluff. We'll make Phil Kelly angry, but the fluff right here, right? This is the narrative. I mean, like, that's true, right? I mean, this is, so we're going to break, well, not all of this down, because my God, we'd have to do the whole 8-hour show again. Every word. Here we go.
Every word.
Begin. No, so we're going to talk about a lot of this, some of our favorite parts of it, cover the narrative in general, bring everybody up to speed, that sort of thing. Should be a lot of fun. But of course, first.
Yeah. Her.
I don't know what words I'm saying right now, but anyways, it's time for the news. What kind of news do we have?
So, I'm going to start with the important one.
Oh, okay. What's the important one, Tom?
Made to order is back, folks. Cetra rules.
Yeah, that is really the most important thing. Doug, you have an opinion on this. I can tell from your exasperation.
It's just, they have this great opportunity to just like let the Tomb Kings just kind of go away, and they just keep pulling it in, and every time they do, I get
a little bit at a time.
I get a blast of like, so whatever happened to that guy, and like whatever happened to Cetra, and it's just like
Do you respond? I assume people come to you with lore questions quite a bit, given the focus of your channel. So do you respond with the end of his story out of the novel where he killed the Troggoth Lord, pointed at Nagash, and was like, I'm coming back for you once I'm done with them, and marched off into the Chaos Wastes? Because that's how his story ended.
Sure.
I'm just saying. He's going to be back. He'll be fine.
Them bringing back Cetra, like, as a made-to-order thing, and the other, like, Nehekara stuff is, like, drunk texting your ex. You know what I mean? It's just like, you don't need to. There's no reason to. But you feel in the moment like it's a good idea.
Yeah, like only bad things will come.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
That is the best analogy probably in the history of this show. I think in 3.5 years. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I don't really disagree, though.
Well, here's what I'll say. If you missed out on a chance to get your Cetra model or your Khalida model, which I do think are both exceptional models, it is a nice chance to pick them up. I assume you're going to get the fine cast version of both if you order them.
I'm sure.
And that is a nightmare. So just be prepared.
Tuck in.
Tuck in for the gap filling. Like, that's... do not assume you will be painting that guy the day you open the box. Like, you are going to spend a solid day cleaning, scraping, and gap filling.
I will say that I was going to say that Nehekara, like, priestess gal, I mean, she looks really great. If you love Neferata as an army, like, picking up 2 or 3 of those is probably not a bad idea, but...
I have 5 Khalidas.
Oh, it's Khalida. Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that was her actual model. Okay.
Nope, I have 5 of them. So, I feel like I'm covered here.
I'm not gonna lie. I am gonna pick up probably at least one more Khalida. Like, I have Cetra. I don't really need another one. But I mean, but like Khalida, like, she could be a good priestess. And like, if I'm gonna do some counts as stuff for like zombie dragon, like like Kemrian conversion stuff, she makes a great like mummy lord, person standing on top. Much like you did, Vince, with your own like Coven Throne Sphinx thing. No, it's great conversion. But it's so funny. Like, this is gonna be blasphemy for me, but like they did this, and I'm like, "Aw, that's cute." And then my next question was, "Where's Thorgrim?"
That's very funny. By the way, yeah, we've only mentioned those two. Like, there's also the orcs and goblins characters and the ogre characters,
like Grom the Paunch, and
which is like the coolest dude.
Agreed.
By the way, like Grom the Paunch is the coolest dude. But again, completely overshadowed by the King of Kings. You know, the Golden Hawk of the endless desert. He who rules all. Like, there is no one above Cetra. So there you go.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, Thorgrim was the only real like mini that I missed. Like, I have the old like Throne of Power one or the Anvil of Power, like the old Thorgrim. Yeah, but like new one is the one that I wish that I had had. Like, and like when it all went out, I missed out on the order. And like, it's a beautiful model, and it's like a capstone. Even though obviously it can't be used as anything counts as. Like, it's just a great model. I was really hoping they'd drop that one.
Cool terrain piece, or sort of a centerpiece for a display board or something like that. Certainly, like that's an eye-catching piece on a display board.
So I'm hoping they're not done. Is what I would say. I'm hoping they're not.
They're not. Yeah. As was mentioned in the comments, by the way, if they were to ever put like Ushabti back up, like I'd probably make a mistake. I'd probably make a mistake because I have 26 Ushabti right now, and there's no reason not to get more.
I would probably buy at minimum 4 sets of Ushabti. So like six melee, 6 bow. I may even go 9 of each if they ever drop those again.
Sure.
Wow. Like, it could happen. Because it's the only Tomb Kings that realistically that I don't have numbers that I would like. Like, everything else, I have like 4 Sphinxes and, you know, multiple Necrosphinx. You know, like I have all of the everything except for the Ushabti. I don't have as many as I'd like.
So that's I love that our headline is they're remaking some old minis that won't have any real purpose in a sort of match play.
Yeah, and you'll never be able to really be able to use them again. It doesn't matter. They're beautiful. So that's happening next week, and that's exciting. Like, I'm happy. And like I would love for them to be some real support for Legends. Like, at the end of the day, like I would love to see some Legends events crop up, or you know, somebody to do all the dumb work of pointing out Legends to actually have it just be semi-playable. Like, not anything highly competitive, but just something fun that people can kind of line up and have some events and have some fair play between old kind of armies. Like, I think it'd be a neat thing to do, is what I would say. So I hope we see some more support for Legends.
Sure.
Okay, so pre-orders. We're talking about ordering, so let's talk about the pre-orders for this week. We have like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's so much stuff. I think in the show notes I said all the Ghost Riders, because that's what it is. It's like it's all the Ghost Riders, just like the regular Cav, the named dude on his Pega sticks.
The King, the Craven King.
Yeah, the Craven King.
Yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah, he's pretty sweet. Yeah, I will say, like, I may have made some mistakes this last week. I have an 18-pound box or something along those lines showing up on my mail box, like in my doorstep tomorrow. I may have bought all of the Night Haunts that GW has. Like, it might happen. I don't know. It's just weird. You just
suddenly returned and was like, you know what, ghosts.
Yeah, like ghosts. Like I was like, maybe they shouldn't piss off. Maybe they should be around. So
was this like you had a revelation about painting them? Did you like find a scheme you happen to love? And was it like a god making snakes where you were just like, this is easy, and sort of realized you could do the army in a weekend?
Like, yeah, it may have been my army in a week, and I was wait a minute. I can do this for the whole army, not just the box. And so I'm like, I need an extra army laying around that's fully painted. Done. Click buy.
Yes, I can see no potential downside to this decision.
And as I'm staring at like witch elves without heads that are half painted on my desk, and I'm like, don't worry, girls, maybe someday.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure we'll come back to them. They've moved back to 2020, but I'm excited.
No, so all of the ghosts, all of the Stormcast, or a lot of them are coming. It looks like we may still have 1 or 2 more kits coming down the line, but a bulk of them are coming. The big standout to me, obviously, are the partial boxes. Like they have like some semi-starters of like how to play, plus like basically all the like push to fit stuff. I picked up a bunch of those push to fit, and like they are surprisingly not normal plastic. Like all the Stormcast are gold. And of the and like all the others are like the teal. The ghosts are like the teal blue, and I'm like, I did not see this coming. Like when I opened it up,
didn't they do that towards the end with the last starter set, like the Thunder and Blood? Okay,
yeah, Thunder and Blood did the same thing. It's just like I opened up the main starter box and they're all gray, and then I opened up the fit and they're not all gray, and I'm like, okay, I have to get paint on these now. They feel weird.
Work.
Yeah, exactly. No, I will say I did pick up some of the push to fit boxes as well on both the Stormcast and the Night Haunt. And for the Stormcast, there were a bunch of alternate sculpts in there. Like I so love that. So like they have a couple like potential like commander captain models amongst both the starter set and the push to fit, and they're different enough that you could be like, oh, this is a normal dude and this is my captain, or this is my captain, or split them up. So it's not like it's not the problem you had with prior starter sets where you got like the Liberator leader and with his like arm up and the captain shield, and he could be nothing else. Right. Now like there are a couple like alternate potential sculpts you can be like, this is my leader, this is a normal, or you can split them. Or it's a neat idea. I'm glad they went that route.
Yeah, I think the most notable exception that we haven't seen yet for Stormcast is obviously the Tiger Riders, right? The Dracolines, like the actual units. We're getting the Lord on pre-order, right? But we're missing the like. There's a couple other exceptions as well, but the really big one I think that most people are waiting on is the Dracoline Riders, because everybody has seen how pretty brutal those guys are and wants to get them on the table, and nope. She's not gonna make you wait for it. Just really drawing it out. Yeah. So there's a couple other ghost models too. We're still waiting on.
Yeah. And like we go ahead. Sorry.
No, I said that's legit. That there's so much stuff coming in. That's awesome.
And yet again, we're gonna have a week with nothing. By the by. Because we're gonna have the kill team week, so they're like, yet again, they're like, nope, you're waiting longer.
They're just stretching it out. Yes, indeed.
Tantric release schedule. That's all I'm saying. So, the notably though, I don't have this in the news, but I did want to comment on it. The pre-order week that's going to be for Kill Team does have the separate boxes with the new like Sector Imperialis terrain, those big cathedral buildings come out separately at that same time. And there is nothing innately 40K about those. Like you could certainly use those as awesome AoS terrain too. So like those buildings, I mean, there's a couple pieces that might look a bit out of place. I shouldn't say it. There's like some doors and portals that might look weird, but those could be dealt with. The superstructure itself is pretty just gothic and
legit.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, this is the last thing that you need to be talking about, because I've been painting terrain like a lot this last week.
Sure.
And I'm like, I could use some of that for my table.
Sure. Well, good. I'm good to make you make more bad decisions, Tom. So there you go.
Indeed. Other things that are dropping soon with the discontinuation of the first AoS starter. We saw that both of the original starter, that was the 125 AoS starter, got split into basically 2 new start collecting sets. So kudos to them. It's pretty sweet. I'm glad that those are available now.
Do we have a price on this?
85, I think.
Really? Yeah. As far as I know, it's the same standard star collecting price, and like that's quite a lot of stuff for that. You have to deal with the odd number of retributors still, but other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if they're going to drop the other Stormcast Star Collecting box, because you already get everything in there plus way more.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lord Celestin is the only thing I think you're picking up that you don't pick up anywhere else, right? That one comes with the Lord Celestin?
That one? No, it comes with one on foot, I think.
Yeah, the Lord Celestin
one on foot. Yeah.
Jack off the Lord Relictor.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was talking about the first one because that Lord Selson actually doesn't come in a lot of getting started sets.
Mhm.
Like he's actually pretty hard to get your hands on unless you want to pay 35.
Right.
So yeah, that's happening. So super awesome, exciting things coming. We have a new rumor engine coming. A very
you want to look at that?
stitched
I've
together
got
rumor engine.
Yeah, I got the hot take on this one. I already know what it is.
You got this.
I got this.
Is this Piss Off Ghost 2?
No,
Electric
no.
Boogaloo?
I'll share us up here. All right, so here's our image.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna let you gentlemen tell me what this is first. Tom, you go ahead. Then we're gonna let Doug guess.
It's stitched flesh.
Yep.
That's it. That's all you got.
All I got. That's all I got.
We took a poll at our little group of friends, and we said it's either a Slanesh necktie specifically,
Yep.
or a very fashionable ogre's pants because they're all stitched together and stuff too.
Ooh, that's a good call.
Sure. So I think that the obvious answer is this could be nearly anything for nearly anyone, right? I mean, realistically,
Not Stormcast.
sure, but like the number of factions that use this sort of like stitched together thing is so high. You could see this kind of thing across almost anybody in Destruction. There could be death units using this. Across the lands of 40K, there could be tons of options. But I'm going to read you a small section from the core book right now. Here we go. The glittering war hosts of Slanesh are marvelous to behold. Long, elegant banners proclaim the glory of the Lord of the war host and pledge undying devotion to the Dark Prince. Each warrior is tattooed and pierced with obscene sigils and runes that hurt the naked eye, and fine silks and carefully flayed skins are draped across the polished and bladed armor. So I'm just saying, we've got flayed skin. Boom, it's a Slanesh cloak. There you go. Answered. Asked and answered.
I will say the stitching matches the skin cloak that like the Dark Eldar homunculus I think he has.
It
so
does, yeah.
It is very.
It also matches like Fabius Bile's cloak too.
Yeah.
Do you remember Mangle's Man Players?
Yeah.
Yep. The skinned so if Mangle's Man Players in the banner, like which was like a human skin, the stitching is similar on that too.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's just so many possibilities. We're going to return to that Slanesh page later on because like when we talk about the narrative, because in that page, do I believe the entire future is revealed? All right. But anyways, so there you go. As always, what are your guesses? Tell us. But I mean, it's the problem with it is it literally could be like 80 different things. And there's no reason to think it's any one of those over any other.
Right.
So.
So we had an update for the app. So that happened. That's exciting. Some scrolls got fixed.
Yeah, a large number of them. Like there's still some that are weird, certainly. But I am impressed. They're doing a lot of good work. He's doing a lot of good work turning that stuff around.
Talking about drunk texting your ex, the Thunderer scroll is still as of yet unfixed for KO.
Did you email them, Tom?
I have not yet. I've just watched with sad joy as like on the KO page, people are like, "It's the new scroll," and I'm like, guys, no, it's not. Like it's been confirmed that it's not correct. Like they know that it's not correct.
Confirmation in the comments that it has been emailed in and confirmed to be on the list to fix. So there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, awesome. Because I'm like trying to talk this guy down, and I'm like, "Hey, don't." And he's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna keep playing it like this." And I'm like, "No, like it's don't be that guy. Like why? Come on." And he's like, "No, it's not official until it's official until GW." But I'm like, don't be that dude. Come on. And
don't be that guy.
And at the end of the day, like. That by like promoting that this is the new scroll, it only reinforces like the rage that's going to happen later when people have built and painted their models in a way that like they are no longer going to be able to play them in. So just don't do it. It's not real. It's fake. Don't do it.
Fake news. All right, so
Indeed.
yeah, no, I've been happy with the speed of the updates. I understand. Like this was a huge changeover because they had to reconstitute and recreate all these scrolls, right? And then basically sort of manually get them all into this app. So it doesn't surprise me that, when you've got, I don't even know how many 100/1,000 of these scrolls, it's easy to get version control off on some of them.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
I'm forgiving of this. Look, I make software.
Perfectly understandable.
I make software for a living. Software releases with known issues. No matter how good you are, no matter how much you test, it's what happens. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, people make mistakes. It's a thing.
And most importantly, Archeon got fixed. So, sadly, he doesn't have our hope that his rend would somehow be a star that was like super high and went lower was dashed against the rocks of cruel fate.
Take your neg 1, Slayer of Kings.
That's all right.
Like that neg 1.
He doesn't need it. He rolls 6s. Just roll 6s is the answer.
That is. And then the other thing that happened this last week was the Six Nations event occurred. And so it was you could maybe look at it as the Battle of Six Nations, where a lot of filth just came on display. So I'm looking forward to the FAQ that's coming in a couple of weeks to respond to this.
Sure, yeah. I think we can expect the FAQ, either next week or the week after. I don't remember what the schedule looks like, but it's one of the two.
I mean, normally they said they try within 2 weeks, so that would be at the end of next week, I think.
Okay.
Technically it should be this weekend, right? Because last week we didn't release on Saturday, right? We released on the prior Saturday.
I don't know. This might be a bigger one, and they might have go with 3 weeks or something.
Get 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. Fixes are coming, folks. Don't get worked up about it. Yes, goblins are doing 126 damage each, and
that's not the right number, but it's a lot. Sure. Yes.
I think it's
not that isn't on the chart. It's a double.
128.
This is the grain of rice thing. Thank you, Tom.
128.
It's a very simple mathematical principle. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. RAM.
Yes, got it. Yes, 100. I'm sorry. The goblins were doing 128 damage. I apologize.
Sure.
Yes, and other silliness with Croak and all that stuff. So fixes are going to come. There'll be an FAQ, and the world isn't going to end, folks. It'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'll say this. Watching that Six Nations go down, what's funny about it is, one, some of the people who played Bentless immediately said, this stuff's bent, and we're raising it up to the right ways to get it, request to get it fixed. So it's cool. But if you look at you want to talk about the classic forest for the trees situation, it was, every one of these people were like, this new game is fantastic. We had such a good time. The weekend was amazing. I had a lot of great games. Here are some issues we noted. And everybody was like, oh my God, the issues. And just completely ignored the banner text, right?
Yep.
Where everybody was like, yeah.
Hey, okay. It was a good weekend and everything worked, and everybody, yeah. No,
I am shot. I've gotten in a couple games now of AoS 2. I've gotten my endless spells on the table and stuff, not every one of them, but
you actually got them on the table this time?
I did. Yeah, absolutely. I got them all together this last week. So I finally put them all together, and
No, I was just taking a shot at your game on the stream where you're.
I got an endless spell on the table there too. I got 2 of them. Thank you.
What?
So I had Purple Sun out. I'm lying too, because I didn't assemble the Purple Sun yet. I looked at that thing and I was just like, nah.
One hot tip that was suggested was to not build the inner framework. That's a trap. Don't do the inner framework because it doesn't, the seams don't go together as well as if you literally just do the outer shell and then just glue them all together.
Interesting. Well, I did build the framework, but I haven't glued anything, so I don't know. I haven't glued any of them, so I can take them all apart.
I glued all of them, and I didn't have that bad of a time with plastic glue and smoothing and making the lines disappear.
Yeah.
But some people have said that it's been easier to do a plastic glue, a slow set plastic, and then do all the pieces at the same time because the frame doesn't because there sometimes if things don't go in super tight, then what ends up happening is you'll end up with seams, very obvious seams.
Sure.
So.
I mean, most of them were just like, most of the endless spells could not be easier. Most of them were just like cut off the sprue, stick on base, done.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So
mine are all primed right here.
Nice. But my overall impression is incredibly positive. I will say I haven't used any of the realm rules other than the realm artifacts yet. So I haven't given those a full play.
Oh, we have. They're a blast.
Good. I'm glad
Realm of Life is awesome.
I mean, I've heard a lot of people saying they really enjoy them. I just have no feedback because I haven't gotten to try them.
Right.
So. But overall, I cannot say how impressed I am at actually, like, again, exempting these, few weird quirks that came out, how unbelievably smooth everything runs for how many different levers were pulled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, most stuff still worked pretty much exactly how I expected it to work and felt pretty good and solid and like a fun game. Yeah. So it's ridiculous to think, but hey, there you go. So yeah,
there were a lot of levers pulled.
So many, so very many. But it all worked out. So there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did we have any other news items, or does thus endeth the news?
That's all I had. It was the all the stuff coming out.
There's one outstanding issue, like community discussion, that I've seen kind of pop up.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So this might be. So this question came in, and it's a good discussion, and it was about basing the endless spells. So I thought this would be a good thing for people to drop in the comments, right? Because here's the reality. Okay, so I have 11 armies. Okay. I'm not going to buy 11 sets of Malign Sorcerer. Like, I'm not doing that, right? And I do a new tournament army every year, and like I paint it to a high standard. The goal is to do one sort of display army a year, and that's how I do it. And that's faster than some and slower than some. Doesn't matter, whatever. The point being is that, like, you're not going to rebase those spells every time. So if your RTO's going to hold like the basing scheme for your spells against you as being non-contiguous with the rest of your army, because again, I'm going to use the cogs. Here's an easy example. I'm going to use the cogs with both my Dock and my Iron Jaws, right?
Yeah.
And even beyond
most other armies.
Well, I'm not necessarily. I just they're both like both of them have good ability to take advantage of both sides of the cogs, right? The armies that I would spend that 60 points on is honestly the ones where I can use both sides. I'm not sure I would buy the cogs if I was only using like the wizard buff and didn't care about the movement as much. Neither here nor there. The point being is that I would paint those cogs much differently. Not just even the base, right? But the cogs themselves, I would think would look different in both armies. So if like I make the cogs look like Iron Jaws cogs,
you're gonna put orky symbols all over, and
sure, or whatever. Am I then just kicking myself in the teeth for a tournament if I want to take them there and use them with my Dock, right? Like, what's the solution there? And I don't know. Even if you just paint the model itself generically, you still have the base being non-contiguous, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple things. The first I would say is that for me, I'm going to magnetize a number of the really popular ones. Like the ones that are easy to magnetize, I'm going to magnetize all those bases.
So you're going the Paul Wagner route.
Yeah, I mean, that was my plan from the beginning. Like I'd already cut and glued magnets, and like I'm already going down that road on the stuff that I know that I'll use in multiple armies. That said, I mean, if I was really committed to doing it, like all the endless spells are on eBay for $12 or something like that.
Sure.
And so like you can go pick up your own endless spell pretty cheap right now. Like if you were just had like one or two endless spells that you wanted to include in your army, so you don't have to buy the entire set necessarily. That said, I'm planning on magnetizing a bunch of mine. I know one solution was to I thought this was really interesting. To paint the base in the scheme of whatever the spell is. I know that Steve Herner had done this with a number of his, and it looked actually really good. So he would basically hide the base in like the gel Like
Yeah.
the Liquitex
Like
gel.
use gel medium or something like
Yeah.
that, or do a
make it, like-
realistic water pour over it, and then do
Yep.
a little texture on top, so it looks like swirly twirly magic all the
Magic.
way
And
up.
so it's like being summoned, yes, out of
Okay.
stuff. And then, it's in the same scheme of whatever the spell is. And so it looks like a whole model. And the base doesn't have to be like ground or dirt or whatever. Obviously, that's a little bit harder on something like Gravetide.
Yeah.
I mean, that said, like I based mine, so I have like real dirt in my Gravetide, like all the way up. Like I went for the realistic like dirt wave.
Oh,
so
nice.
it's gonna be exciting. I'm looking forward to painting it. So
I guess TOs also have the ability to like kind of decide what constitutes part of your army, because it doesn't have to just be whatever's in your list. Because why couldn't they grade the malign sorcery stuff as they would like a cliff or a rock or a tree or something like that on your display board?
Sure.
Where it's it's a part of this diorama, so to speak, but I mean it's not necessarily the actual army itself.
Yeah.
it's a great question.
No, it's a good point. Like, I think that I think in general, I would want to see, like, for my own personal tastes, I would want to see TOs go pretty gentle on this, because there is a fairly high cost barrier to this, right? And a time barrier for what something like these spells. And again, you can't get enough. Like, none of these solutions are absolutely perfect, right? And I can't in good conscience go out there and say, Quicksilver Swords, that's a completely simple, silly, endless spell that any army might end up including, right? Because it's like 20 points. It's generically useful, right? As sort of a ranged attack spell. It fits generally no one army better than any other in the broadest sense. So, like, I can't ask somebody to go out and buy, 5 or 10 different Quicksilver Swords and do them completely in a style and basing and everything of their army just because they didn't want to let 20 points go fallow, right? Like, it just, that doesn't seem legit. You know what I mean? Like, I think we should have a little bit of tolerance for this. Like, try to do one of these imperfect solutions, make it work as best you can, but let's not hold it against people. That's what I would say.
Yep. Just hold it loosely is what I would say.
So hold on loosely, but don't let go. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, like, would you dock somebody points if their dice weren't in scheme with their army?
Yeah, I saw that in the comments. I agree with that. I mean, that's exactly like it's somewhere in between the line of game aid and game peace.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It rides this weird line. That being said, I'm going to make a bunch of poor decisions and just kit bash them out. That's going to be my solution. Like, I said all this to knowing that I already have a solution. Like, I have a ton of extra, I bought extra cogs, and I have a ton of extra, like, Iron Jaws weapons that I'm just going to make my own Quicksilver choppas, right? And stuff like that. So just,
That's awesome.
Whatever, go nuts. The Gravetide is pretty simple. That's called make a big pile of dirt and then stick skulls in the front of it. That's not hard. They make this box and your backyard makes dirt. So that one's pretty much solved. Like, there's a lot of, and I talked about this before. You can order, I'll share this with everybody. You can order these like bags of cogs, of like craft cogs in huge numbers, super cheap off the internet.
Oh, yeah.
So, if you want extra cogs or whatever. I mean, I think most of them can be fairly straightforwardly duplicated. Some of them are just balls with lightning on them or whatever. Like, that's not even a thing.
Yeah. Ping pong ball with some silly string on it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I have some extra mirrors from Daughters of Cain.
There you go.
Oh, sure. Oh, that'd be a neat. That's a really cool idea. Yeah, for like the daughter spell portals, use the mirror from the back of the Medusa kit, like turn them sideways. Yeah, that could be cool. And then have them in like opposite facings. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's a cool thing you can do. Like what I'm doing is I'm basing mine off my Grand Alliance, not necessarily my faction.
Oh, okay, sure. So more of like, these are your chaos endless spells.
Yeah, it's like my cogs have Nurglings all over them, and the mirrors have blue horror going one through, like base half and half with it. So I mean, it's Tzeentch and Nurgle, but my force is Slaves to Darkness. So I just kind of incorporate whatever I want.
I like that.
But making things based on Grand Alliance is definitely an option.
Yeah, that is a good solution because it seems like it still fits. It's still fitting the broader theme of your army, right? Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. That's a good solution, Doug. I support that fully. There you go. All right. Well, we've given lots of good ideas about this. If you've got other things you think we missed, hey, throw them down there in the comments below, and let's all share some good ideas on this. Okay. So with that being said, let's transition to some pick of the week, where we share our video, blog, podcast, whatever we enjoyed. So, Doug, we'll start with you, sir. What would you like to boost the signal on and share?
Yeah. So my favorite battle report channel, and one that I get to sometimes be a part of, is Rerolling Ones over on YouTube. And they just put out a video they release on Thursdays. Iron Jaws and Slanesh is the last one that came out. And it was super brutal. One of our first games with second edition. And they're fun. They're great guys over there. Do a lot of comedy, like good comedy in the beginning, and then mixed in with just excellent gameplay and rules, and experimenting with stuff that I feel like a lot of other battle report focused channels get kind of stuck in a rut where it's like ITC or bust. And so we experiment with a lot of different stuff as far as like the realm rules, and that's when I played in Guran and I loved it. That kind of stuff.
Right on. Tom, what about you, buddy? What would you like to share?
Friend of the show, Paul Conti, has recently went through a rebranding. His channel is Radio Free Hammer Hall. And for those of you that have not checked it out, I highly encourage it. Paul is continuing to do lots of like math hammering stuff. And he just did a show on doing like looking at Blight Kings and just running the numbers on Blight Kings and talking about like their effectiveness and output and stuff like that. So I would highly encourage y'all to check out Paul's new-ish channel.
Mm-hmm. Did he start a new channel or just rename and rework his current?
He renamed his current.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So yes, as long as you're subbed up, you'll still keep it.
Yeah, that's what I was asking for.
All right, so my pick of the week is perhaps a slightly unusual one, but I think people will enjoy it. So people who know the miniature painting world probably know the name James Wapple. James is an amazing painter. He came from the 2D world, amazingly talented artist out of Chicago. He has a Patreon and he has a whole bunch of stuff, but recently he threw up a really cool video on his channel on YouTube. He has a channel under his name. It doesn't often get updates, but he threw up a 2-hour video of him using oil paints on a bat shark. Like, it's a big giant bat shark model. Don't ask. It doesn't matter what it is. The point why I'm sharing this is because if you've ever had questions about painting large monsters and you don't have, because like the model that he has is pretty big. It's like probably this big, all right, that he's painting. And if you don't have an airbrush, let's say, and you can't set one up, but you want to paint your large monsters and you don't want to work on a lot of like blending and stuff like that. He he paints this whole thing with oils. It's actually really simple how he does it. It's just straight up. You can get a cheap pack of oil paints pretty reasonably, some white spirits, and you will be amazed at how fast you can paint a model of that size and have blends that look like you spent days perfecting them because they will be butter smooth. Now, the problem is you got to paint the model and then not touch it for like 3 days while it dries and cures. But it's a really cool video. He talks through it all, shows exactly his technique. If it's the kind of thing you've ever been interested to try, it's a super cool vid. So I'll link it down below. It's also just fun to watch James work. He really explains everything well. He has a sort of like, he has a very like Bob Ross kind of mentality to him because he uses these big brushes. He's like painting with size 8 and size 10 brushes the whole time. Just these ridiculously massive things. And he's just like, don't worry about it. Oh, we got some paint over there. We'll just fix that. That's fine. No big deal. Here we go. It's all fine. Just keep moving, So, yeah. It's great to watch him work. So there you go. I'll link that down below. All of those will be linked down below. With that, let's turn to some hobby time. Doug, what's on your table, buddy? What are you working on?
I am cranking out a bunch of Fire Slayers right now. So my main army is Slaves to Darkness, Chaos stuff. That's what all my malign sorcery stuff is themed as. And I wanted a secondary project to kind of expand my paint palette. When I'm painting, my Slaves to Darkness is all black and white. So I wanted some bold colors and like the big beards and all that stuff like that. I love it from the Fire Slayers. So picked up a small lot from a guy who was clearing them out, and so it basically comes out to be like a start collecting box and 3 other kits, like 2 Volkites and a Hearthguard.
Nice.
Yeah,
I started on 1,000 points.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, when it's all said and done, it'll be around there. And then I'm just going to buy a second starter box just to fill up the Volkites a little bit more. And then I did a test model, and what I always do is a test model and then factory line assembly. And so I think in the last week I've painted almost 41 guys, I think.
Nice.
Okay.
The last like 15 or so I'm still chugging along on. So yeah.
Nice. All right, dig it. Good. That's sounds like some awesome progress.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy,
A nice clip.
Absolutely. We already talked a little about what you're working on, man. So is there Stormcast still in this mix, or is it
Oh
Ghost
yeah.
only?
No, so I mean, honestly, like I'm doing as my I looked at. So my kids have been playing Stormcast, so I've been kind of working on those, and then I needed an army to play against them, and I've been doing my goblins, but I've gotten to the point where like at the edge of my painted goblins, and I don't want to paint more. Like I'm not gonna lie, like until we get new models, until I have an idea what's happening to Spiderfang, like I'm not gonna paint anymore. And so I was like, well, what do I want to play against the kids? And I had already bought the Soul Wars box, and so I was like, wait a minute. I started tinkering around, and I've been wanting to do a Death Army, and I wanted a fast paint army, and I was going to do skeletons, and then I started messing with these, and I was like, I actually kind of like the Night Haunt, and then I started putting paint on them, and like it went really quick, and so like a lot of the details still need a lot of work, but that was all just airbrush, like. Sure. Just some Swift stuff with Zenithals, and then the washes airbrush really well. Like their new blue, the ghost blue, and then obviously the teal. And so I've just been playing around and kind of like teasing back and forth, and then I'll go in and paint the details and be done. So it'll be a fun, it's a fun painting project. And so I thought, well, I did a starter set in like a couple hours. I guess I could do a couple more starter sets and all the rest of the units. So that's what's happening. So those are a lot of that's arriving tomorrow.
Legit.
Yeah. And so I did that. I've been working on some terrain. Like I did like the little glowy green effect that everybody's been doing on stone that Carrie from Warhammer TV had talked about. And I really like that. And so I started on like a Dreadstone Blight. I put Ascendable to all my malign sorcery, based all those, primed those. I did like a church.
I love that you've got to get up to go get more stuff.
I did like a church, like a Sigmar church, and that's all went pretty well. Had some fun with this is a 3D printed model, magnetized, so I can like put people inside and stuff. And yeah, this has all been going real well, and yeah, just like lots of fun, quick. Painting stuff. As much as I can do to procrastinate on not painting my daughters. And so I haven't analyzed the psychology of that yet, but I'll get to that. And so and then as we talk, I'm detailing daughters right now because I feel guilty literally accomplishing like most of another army and a bunch of terrain. And then I still have metal to paint on daughters. So
yeah, you may just want to focus up a little on one thing or another. I don't know what to tell you, but hey, all right. That's cool.
I took like 2 months off, so I have catch up to do.
It's summer. It's a hobby whirlwind.
So
no, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad you're definitely back in the swing. So for myself, it has also been a very productive hobby week all around for all concerned here, apparently. I finished up my 2K army in a week. I'm putting together the video for that. So I'll have the full tutorial on how I did that 2,000 point army in a week. All told, it was maybe 50 or 60 hours. I did not realize how much I had recorded until I dumped it all into the editing software and realized I had like 2 hours and 40 minutes of video. So this could be a long one. That's how it goes. I don't know what to tell you. so I've got that. I finished that army that's out there, and I'm happy about that. I finished a piece of terrain. I finished a piece of terrain, Tom.
Vince painted terrain.
Boom! How about that? So
I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, man. I finished up my Morn goal, got him out and done. Did an Exalted Seeker Chariot that I just posted up today. And now I have moved on to what's going to be a very fun project, I think, because I have plans. I see the whole scene for this guy. And so what we've got here is Homie G here.
Oh, nice.
So, and I couldn't just let him be, of course. So I had to fix his dumb Y-shaped halberd by putting the extra little claw on there. And in addition, I had to give him fur because like he's naked. This is the weirdest rat. He has no fur. He's just skin. Like in his normal self, he's just all naked rat flesh. And it looks so weird.
You should have had it like burned off, like had like melted skin.
No, it's not. He looks like he's weird. And what's like, he's just a weird model. Let me tell you the most unusual part about this guy. Besides the fact he's a giant, naked, hairless rat. Okay, this is somebody asked.
Is he anatomically correct?
Yes. You have correctly identified.
I knew it.
Thing. So like,
so he's more rat than man.
Well, I had to give him underwear.
More man than rat.
Like you can still see the bulge, but I had to give him underwear. Okay, because I was like,
was he packing?
There's some dangling under there. Let's just say that on the normal model. Okay.
Well, there is on Glotkin as well.
I'm sure. So I had to give him little skivvies to tie in with his like tabard on the front, and then put some fur over the side to kind of cover that up.
Yeah.
On the back of his haunch. But yeah, and it's weird. It's a weird part of the model. Just throw that out there. But yeah, so I'm excited about this dude. I love this model. I think he looks cool as heck.
I'm continually impressed by how large Forge World models are.
This guy is big, right? Like, yeah, I mean, this is a silly thing to compare it to, but there you go. There's a Brimstone horror.
I just saw the Dread Sorin on the Warhammer TV on Twitch for the first time. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's real big. So this guy caused me doing this. I like the plans I have for the base. What this guy does is obviously, he summons the wrong word. He ambushes units. There you go. Right. Like that's his special thing now. So knowing that was going to be the case, I'm going to put him on he comes with like a tiny base. Weirdly, he's on like the 105 base or whatever.
So really not the right size.
No, because like all the other Vermin Lords who are basically the same size as him are on this
130s.
Right.
They're on the 120 by 92, right? And so I'm like, well, this is the base I'm using. So, because I'm going to use him as a normal Vermin Lord sometimes too. And that made me go through and resort all my Skaven bits. And I realized, so I went through everything I had and pulled out all the like giant rats.
Yep.
Okay. So I've got just a giant pile of giant rats. And I'm going to have him actually like bringing up part of
all of the rats.
Well, not that, like actual unit. So in the Azurite Ruin set, there's grading.
Yep. Right? I know. I have a number of those sets coming, maybe.
Yeah, and this guy's up, like he's up on this thing, right?
Yep.
He's not.
Yep.
So he doesn't take up a very big portion of the base.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna have like the Skaven emerging from a tunnel that he's brought him out of on the base. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Little diorama as the guy itself. He's gonna be a big project that I'm trying to do a really nice job with because I really do love the model. So he'll be something I'm working on for the rest of the week and into next for sure. He looks so much better with fur. Like, let me just say that, like, highly encouraged. Fur is a pretty easy thing to do with green stuff. If you have a model like that you want to add some fur to, quick shout out to our buddy Maroc, who has a very simple green stuff fur tutorial on his channel, Maroc Wolf, Marrok. I'll link it. I'll just link it. So if anybody wants to see how to make fur, it really is actually quite simple, and it's a cool trick. So there you go.
Sweet.
That's hobby time. So let's talk about some story, guys. Let's tell some story. So I thought what we would do here is I thought we would start out with a little overview. Okay.
Sure.
So let's start with our broad ages.
Okay.
And start of the 40,000 foot view for the completely uninitiated, right? Because most people probably know this, but there may be some folks here in the audience or who watch this who don't know. So give us the broad sweep of the ages and what has brought us to the current day. I'm going to throw this over to you, Doug, to take us through the broad strokes here.
Sure thing. So after the end times of the old world, the kind of epics that we find ourselves in, there was the Age of Myth, which is Sigmar regains consciousness, discovers the mortal realms, these planes of existence that there's life flourishing in, kind of reforms a pantheon of gods, kind of coming to the idea that, like, this is a really good thing. We should make sure chaos doesn't ruin this too, like it did the old world. Puts it all together, explores them all, and then life is flourishing and generally good. And towards the end of that, chaos began to poke in. This is like super broad strokes. So chaos started to find its way in, and eventually fought. It's kind of like the chaos gods turned their eye to the moral realm, seeing life and all that kind of stuff going on. Made a concerted effort to get in there, and that brings us to the Age of Chaos, which is everyone versus chaos. But chaos is taking names and kicking teeth in, and so pushes everyone back. Pantheon breaks apart because several reasons. Nagash is a turd. Alariel becomes depressed and kind of introverted and just goes off to serve her own realm. Sigmar is trying to hold the ship afloat. It's not working out too well, and realizes that their current strategy of just everyone trying to band together in a very disorganized fashion isn't working. We need a new weapon. Falls back to his realm. Azir closes every single door that goes in there and begins work on a new type of weapon that we know as the Stormcast Eternals. And yeah, the Age of Chaos goes from when chaos kind of really became a prominent force to well after Sigmar locked his doors. And so I don't want to say most of the realms, but a great significant portion of every realm was consumed by chaos. In terms of, like, the realm of life has been tainted by Nurgle, and Khorne goes after the realm of fire quite aggressively, that kind of stuff. And the Age of Sigmar, as we now know it, the current setting, and obviously the name of the game that we're in right now, is when Sigmar busts open his doors armed with his new army of super soldiers and is trying to rally up hope and push back the darkness. And that's everything from, like, day 1, 2015 to like 3 weeks ago.
Sure.
But basically, to sum up the Rumgate Wars, this is the first campaign really quickly. It's a matter of opening all the doors to Azir, pushing back evil, and shutting down some of the main important gateways and transportation lines that Chaos has to kind of throw them into disarray. And out of 7 of the most important gates, I think Order wins 2, Chaos has 2, and 3 of them are either unaccounted for or nobody owns. Which is enough to put a huge kink in the chaos plans. And then that brings us into. Do you want me to go into where we are now?
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk. Well, yeah. Let's talk about obviously, because we've got Malign Portents and sort of the Soul Wars, which begins sort of this new movement.
So I said that Nagash was a turd because he broke off from the Pantheon and was doing his own machinations. Well, here's the thing: Death is order. It's just Nagash's version of order. And by that, I mean, it's about his absolute control, authority. If everything's dead, there's no emotions or anything like that for the Chaos Gods to thrive on. He can solely push them back. Of course, this goes in direct opposition of Sigmar because everyone's dead, and his kind of all about the preservation of life. And so you get this weird dynamic where they kind of want the same thing, but they want it for vastly different reasons. And so what Soul Wars is this new chapter where it's saying, okay, Sigmar was fighting chaos for the first 3 years of this thing, and now Nagash this whole time, instead of sitting on his laurels, has been planning something huge so that he can sweep in, knock both sides off, and take control of everything, which is exactly what he wants.
And he was a little bit butthurt too. There was because what happens is like Sigmar comes in and he's like, I'm gonna take all these noble souls that that died opposing chaos and bring them to my people. And by the way, the best of the best. Oh, by the way, Nagash, you have this underworld world over here in Shaish. I'm gonna raise all of those and make them posthumously. Words aren't working right now. Yes, there you go. He after the fact.
I was going to let you go as long as that took. I just want that to be known.
After the fact, he's like, you know what? All of those that are in your realm, Nagash, I'm taking those, and that's your anvil's Heldenhammer. There are these people who've died eons ago, and Sigmar's like, you know what? You deserve to be in the Hall of Fame too.
Round 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, and then a very large plan, which we'll talk a little more about malign importance later. We'll get into we're gonna crack open some details on each of these ages as we go along. But before we talk about the ages, so that's kind of the broad strokes. And by the way, when we say 3 years, we meant real world time.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
no, you're fine. Just to clarify, because in the real world, a couple, I don't know exactly how many, but more than a century has passed in the
age of Sigmar.
Yeah, in the mortal
in the
realm.
last 3 years of real world time.
Yeah, from Storm Strike down to from Vandus first hitting Brimstone Peninsula or whatever, up to whatever time T0 is right now. Okay. So let's go, but let's sort of identify our major players, because I think a lot of people's questions when they come into this, we see stories through characters, right? It's reading about empires rising and falling is largely boring, right? I'm not that kind of student of history. We tend to see.
Not a big fan of Tacitus.
No, but that's just it. You named a person. Right? Even, and that's my point. Yes, we tend to see history through people, whether that's through the historian reporting it, right? Yeah. Because how Tacitus saw the history he was reporting was different than Josephus or somebody like that, right?
Indeed.
Or the major players of it therein. Certainly when Caesar was writing, the Gallic Wars or whatever, it was self-aggrandizement there, and
maybe a bit.
Telling his own story. So I think it's important that we define the players on the table here, right?
Totally.
Okay. So let's talk about, first of all, we've got Sigmar, our big golden boy. He's effectively our sort of most powerful good god. He is Sigmar from the old world. He reigns supreme in Azure. He is not like a triple OC capital G our world god, right? That is to say, he's fallible, as this story points out, and he himself has, self-doubts, and it talks all sorts of things like that. He makes mistakes. But he, what I love is his origin myth in this world, by the by. It is truly a wonderful myth story of Dracothian, the great star drake. That's like a constellation given form, effectively, right? Dracothian spies this strange light hurtling through the sky, and he wants to collect it, to place it in the heavens with the other stars that he guards, right? And he goes and wraps his tail around this burning ball of light in the sky, and as he inspects it, he notices there is a tiny man stuck onto it as it hurtles through the void and the nothing, right? Yeah. And he looks and sees, and the great Dracothian, the star drake of star drakes, looks and sees Sigmar upon it and breathes his warm, breathes breath back into Sigmar to awake him. And Sigmar then bestows gifts in return and thanks upon Dracothian. If you read it, it's this wonderful mythologized tale, right? It is very much it doesn't, I don't read that like truth. You know what I mean? I don't read that then there was the Battle of the Bulge and this force has moved here and blah, blah, blah. I read it like a fairy tale.
Like a fableized,
Yeah.
That's another thing. Like the Age of Myth, people I think initially read that as like we would say like the Jurassic period, right? Where it's like this is the name we have given to this very factual time period of history, instead of like no, it's actually in the name. Like this is all it's story. I mean, like
Yes.
what's the starting to Lord of the Rings is like story turns to tale, tale turns to legend, or something like you know what I mean. Like this is So it's all kind of ridiculous, but awesome. I mean, in a very poetic way.
Yeah, it reminds me of like, you know, Howard, how he set it up like, or the beginning of Conan, right? Like after Atlantis had fallen into the sea, but before the rise of this, there was this time, you know, and it's just sort of this amorphous thing.
Yeah.
And so like, obviously that's Sigmar. So you mentioned Nagash. You want to go into a little, obviously he's the Lord of Death. He's died and come back a bunch of times. You want to talk about him a little, Doug?
Yeah. So Nagash was found by Sigmar. He was actually instated on Shyish, the Realm of Death, by Sigmar himself. Sigmar was the first to be awoken, realized like if we're going to prevent this from happening again, everyone needs to have like kind of like a place to be on watch. So he set Nagash, someone who also hates chaos, in Shyish. Nagash comes to power, gets his mind back together, and it does say, not in every book that he's in, but there are some where there are other gods of death throughout Shyish. And his number one plan, the first thing he does is he goes and consumes them. And so, like, I don't...
That sounds like Nagash.
Yeah. This to me is like when you give like if you're a parent and you give your kid a wind-up toy, it's on for 10 seconds. You're like, that was a bad idea because it's making noise and sound and lights and all kinds of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I imagine it's the exact same scenario where like Sigmar awakens Nagash and then just everything just goes kind of crazy down there in death.
It's like, oh, Nagash.
Yeah.
There he goes again.
Silly antics. Nagash is the embodiment of death magic in like incarnate. And his story is kind of strange where it's like I think it refers to the old world more than many other of the deities, talking about his time at Nehekhara and his origin story there, which I do have a video about, but it's just cool. It's not necessarily like the most relevant here. As far as like what he started to do you want me to go into like what he's doing now?
Not yet. Let's save that for he is, I think, right now the major for the current age. I would say he is the major antagonist.
Okay.
Like in the true sense of the word, right? Like he has his intentions, and they are opposed, as you mentioned earlier. Like he's all about stopping chaos, right? Like he has no desires to let chaos in the door. But he is still an antagonist in the truest sense of the word, right?
Yep.
Okay. Tom, you wanna talk a little bit about the Elvish deities, because so this would be Teclis, Tyrion, Marathi, and Malarian, formerly formerly known as Malekith.
So in that Age of Myth, in the fall of the world that was, Slaanesh gluts herself on all of the elven souls, and what ends up happening is she is so engorged with, fattened by the elven souls that, like, I don't want to say he's satiated, because that would be an antithesis to Slaanesh itself, right. But engorged and out of action. And upon this gluttonous form, the Teclis... the elven gods become aware. Let me say it that way, because they had been found. Malekith had woken up. Malekith had like wandered around, and then stumbles upon like Marathi, like naked in a glade, which is his mom, which is weird. Dancing with shadow.
It's not
demons.
that weird if you've read their back. If you read enough.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Notably, she crawled herself out. She was what she.
Well, no. He finds her like in the glade dancing with shadow demons, and he's like, what's up with that? And they recognize one another. We later find out that like she choked Slaanesh and crawled out of his gullet.
Yes.
Because of course she did.
Of course she did.
And she's been doing her own thing. So anyways, the elven gods, all of them, conspire to rescue their people.
Yep. And they basically trick Slaanesh into a trap and have him have him trapped and chained in what is it called?
The twilight between
Is it Olgish?
Olgish, yeah, there you go.
I nailed it. That's why I'm here.
There you go. The twilight between the realm of light and the realm of shadow.
Yep.
And so in this place of stasis of eternal like light and dark, they trap Slaanesh in chain, which is some of the best artwork in the book. And begin the extraction process. And the first elven souls to be extracted are those that Teclis forms into the
Idneth Deepkin, and then promptly casts them down because.
And he's like,
parenting is hard.
Yeah, he is.
Parenting is hard. You're not useful to me anymore.
He was terrible in the old world. He's terrible now. Yeah, like just a couple of quick notes there. Obviously, Marathi is the only one who isn't a true god, though she's designing to be one.
Yeah, she's pretty angry about that.
Yes, which she, of course. Malarian
doesn't like to be denied.
Yeah, he's indeed. Malarian is weird now. Like they've only kind of sort of mentioned what he looks like, and we have some weird art of him. It seems like he merged with his dragon. So he is.
Don't die near dragons. That's the lesson of the day.
Sure. Yeah. So he has a weird form now. And Tyrion is blind. And relies on his dozen other senses. They specifically say he has a dozen other senses. So good for him, I guess. And Teclis is still Teclis, who helps his blind brother around and is a powerful, magic user.
Dude.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I think another player who has not figured in immensely to the story, but behooves a mention for a fun element is Gorka Morka, or Gork and Mork. They can be separate or together depending on their mood that day. The interesting story of Sigmar finding Gorka Morka. So he found him basically trapped in a mountain and busted him out. And then Gorka Morka did what Gorka Morka does and was like, "All right, bro, we're wrestling. Let's do this." And so why ain't you fighting? And they then have a punch up across the realm of fire that they like. So these two gods wrestle their way around this realm of fire and have this ridiculous like league spanning wrestling match that crushes mountains and reshapes the geography and everything. And in the end, Sigmar like wins the wrestling match, and Gorka Morka is like, "All right, bro, I'm in. Let's do this." So he kind of hangs out, and Sigmar basically in the beginning. Gorka Morka hangs out as part of the Pantheon for a little while, and he puts him to use killing like sort of the most powerful beasts of Gur and of the realms in general.
Even though he just sent like Grimnir off to do that, like, "Hey, go slay that thing."
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it didn't work with Grimnir. Like he got rid of Grimnir that way.
He did. Like, yeah, we'll talk about Grungy and Grimnir in a minute. Yeah, but like. So he sends Gorka Morka out, and Gorka Morka just wrestles and beats up things for a long time until eventually he gets bored. They specifically mention that like he gets sick of this dumb politicking and all this stupid crap from the rest of the people, and he's like, "Whatever, let's fight." And he just starts like whying and fighting and stuff like that, as you would imagine him to do. I think he's been pretty like he hasn't figured into the stories in big ways other than through his sort of forces, right? Where his destruction is ever present. Leading sort of wars and fights across the realms. There's sort of, if you read a lot of the other races' stories, destruction is always like the force in the wilderness outside of their walls of civilization, right? Like when you read about like the Deepkin or the Stormcast or these free cities or anything, it's always like, and they were keeping the destruction at bay.
Yep.
It's always part of the story. Destruction is more like this ever-present sort of force in the world of anti-civilization, right? Trying
dissolution.
Of like the entropy trying to smash down what order is building, right?
Which you might expect chaos to be doing that, but it's different.
Well, yeah, I mean, chaos has a much different end. Like Gorka Morka is like the orcs aren't looking for your soul, your eternal soul. They're looking for a punch up. Yeah. It's a little slightly different end. So that should bring us to Grungy and Grimnir. Doug, you want to touch on these two?
Yeah. So Sigmar was traveling, found these two trapped inside of a volcanic mountain, if I'm not mistaken. and freed them from it. I'm sorry, I'm getting all confused. So I had to double check. Need verbal cues.
I mean, it's a lot.
So freed them, and then the two Duarden gods made promises to Sigmar. Grimnir, being the fiery redhead, very aggressive in nature kind of aspect of all Duarden, made a promise that he was going to go, made an oath of valor. So like, I'm going to go slay something for you as a way of thanking you for freeing me, pointing me towards something. And Sigmar was like, no, we're fine. Everything's really nice here. And he's like, no, I got to fight something. He's like, okay. And he points him towards a huge molten lizard, which Tom is showing us, or sorry, Vince is showing us right now.
Volcantrix.
Volcantrix.
Volcantrix, yep.
Mother of all
Salamanders.
Serpents and salamanders, stuff like that. Those two have a huge brawl, hit each other so hard that they both explode. And because gods don't really die in this setting, instead of just dying outright, Grimnir has been shattered to a bajillion pieces and fused with gold, which when his spirit's in the material, it's now known as Urgold. And so his race of followers, the Fire Slayers, go around and try to collect him. They're trying to put him back together like the world's greatest jigsaw puzzle. And Grugni, the other Duarden god, his way of saying thank you was much more temper-minded, where he just said, hey, I'm going to do you a solid, and the next time you need something cool built, just give me a call. Which is, like, in contrast, way better. But he was actually instrumental in designing the reforging process, the Anvil Apotheosis. So he played a major role in the construction of what we now know as Stormcast Eternals and Azir in general.
Unfortunately, he wasn't able to perfect that process.
No, he wasn't. And we'll talk about that, I assume, when we talk about Soul Wars a smidge. But there's a lot of... there's a lot of things that Greg does where they kind of mention it, like, this is almost perfect, kind of like hit a fortress in the Rumgate Wars, where it's like it can stop everything except for apparently this Chaos Force that went in and took it.
His story is very sad. Like, honestly, Grungy has one of the most depressing through lines of the sort of these major players and gods. Yeah, because he like, you know, his through line is when the dwarves are getting killed during at the birth of the Age of Chaos, he decides not to help them and to continue aiding, you know, sort of Sigmar in his great quest, because he wants the dwarves to sort of get tougher, and he thinks that they'll survive and they'll be like diamonds, they'll harden under pressure. And instead, like, the Duarden get pissed at him and basically turn their backs on him because he didn't show up to help them, and he basically ends up depressed. Gives the forge over to the anvil over to the six smiths, and just kind of like Bruce Banners himself off into the distance, and like he's just kind of.
I mean that's yes, and then those dwarves become the KO because they're like, peace out. we have guns and airships.
Right.
Yeah, and they take up to the skies. Yes,
Grugni helps those who help themselves. Peace out.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so if there's a couple more we should probably touch on quickly. Alariel, obviously, who you mentioned a little bit about her. Tom, do you want to talk about Alariel? Do you want me to take Alariel?
You go ahead and take the false queen.
All right, so Alariel was extremely useful to Sigmar during the Age of Myth, because everywhere she walks, life blooms, right? So she kind of walks around and really has a big part of like making a lot of the more crazy part of the mortal realms actually able to be settled, because she can go and turn deserts into, you know, farmland and stuff like that just by walking around. And so she's very helpful and useful for a while, and as basically like the world's best terraformer. But then she gets sad because she is seasonal. And like, as summer turns to fall and winter, she gets depressed, and spiritually, not.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean.
Not literally. She gets all sad and like retreats, and is just like, oh, and then kind of like basically retreats into herself, and eventually she becomes a little like, she goes back into her realm, and during the Age of Chaos, she retreats completely as winter happens, and blah blah blah. Eventually, she gets woken up. A thing happens. She becomes a little pod. Like literally a little pod that's being carried around by a branch witch or wraith or whichever one.
Yeah.
And who was grown out of her own arm. And then the Stormcast have to save her bacon because she can't save herself.
Hollow Knights, baby.
Yeah, the Hollow Knights save her from the encroaching forces of Nurgle. And eventually then she goes from winter aspect, wakes up, goes into her spring and war aspect, and that's where she is right now. So she's back and fighting Nurgle Holy and back on the side of the good guys. All the while, we all know it's just a matter of time before she gets sad again and retreats or whatever. But yes,
she's in her torrential storm form.
Sure, yes, she's very angry right now.
Yep.
But so she's obviously back in big time. Okay, so all the Chaos Gods are still the Chaos Gods.
Yep.
Let's just state that emphatically. Like, they are who they are, and also the Horned Rat joined up with them because I guess they needed somewhere to stick him, so he's in there now. Although it is specifically stated he is the weakest of them. Trying to think of other players. Archaon is still around, the Ender of Worlds, the Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse, and he controls through one of the things that happened in the story, he took control of a big sort of fortress in the middle of kind of all the realms.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
all points.
Yes, he smote Nagash at one point in history for like the 72nd time Nagash has been killed. And he's still running around tearing stuff up. He is much like he was in the old world, except with an even better mount. But he's still.
They're just missing that redemption arc with him. Like, how great!
I think we've gone past it. I think we're a little past that at this point.
I know. Like, there's just such a great opportunity.
I think we had that chance at the end of the old world, and we blew past it.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, are there anybody else we feel like we want to touch on? That's a lot of the big players, obviously.
Yeah. No, I think that's all of them. I mean, not all of them like are active players, but they all affect certain armies. So I think that's a great coverage of them.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's a lot of then heroes below this. And,
totally.
We could literally just spend like the next 3 hours talking about all the various heroes and stuff. So we'll get past that. Cool. Some of them may come up as we're talking about the story. Okay. So next up, let's move to the actual mortal realms themselves. So there are 9 realms in total, if you count the realm of chaos as one thing, as well as a bunch of let's call them demi-planes.
Yep.
For anybody who played Planescape in D&D, this should be immediately familiar to you. Okay, like the way that these realms work, because they're infinite, but they're immeasurably large. Mm-hmm. As you get to the edge of them, they become more wild. They are basically solidified magic of that realm. This is more or less
winds of that magic.
Yeah. So in the realm of fire, as you get close, when you're in the middle, that's where sort of the magic is the most stable and people tend to live. And as you go towards the outer edge, things get wild and crazy and so on and so forth. Yeah. So let's just quick go around the horn here on this stuff. Effectively the realms all interact as you would imagine. Azir, which is the safest place, that's Sigmar's home, is heaven. And it's sort of a star. And it's the stars in the sky.
At the center being Space Station Sigmar.
At the center being
around
Space
the
Station
core
Sigmar.
of the old world.
That's
and
right.
It's the core of the old world with which all the metal that makes up the Stormcast are mines.
Yes.
And when I say these things are impossibly big, it's I really want to put a pin on that because I want to flip to a map here in this book and just kind of point something out. Okay. So all right, this is, I'll do it like this. I'll lock onto myself here. See this? I don't know how that's showing. This is the realm of fire. Okay. And it's basically near infinite for all intents and purposes. See this tiny little circle right here? Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This tiny little circle is the Great Parch. Okay. Now you might say, okay, who cares? Well, the Great Parch, here's a blow up of it. There's the Great Parch. Okay. Yep. And the Brimstone Peninsula, the thing where all of those wars happened to begin this, is this tiny little triangle right there. Okay.
Yep.
So all of that initial confrontation was here, this tiny spot of this tiny area of the massive bigger realm. These things are just possibly beyond imagination big, right? And that's, I think, extremely advantageous because we can never fill in the corners of the map, right? There are always places to tell your own stories, for them to do new settings, new cities, new worlds, new civilizations, new armies, new whatever. Like, it is so impossibly massive that this world will never be full.
Totally. And I think it's important to note for new folks that, like, when we talk about specific realms, they each have every kind of environment in them.
Right.
Because of their size. So, like, Realm of Fire isn't just volcanoes. It also has forest. And one of the stories has Stormcast on an icy mountaintop and those kinds of things where, like, they all have versatility within them. Right.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like, they talk about how, you know, in the Realm of Light you have sort of, which is interesting. All these have their own personality, right? So in the Realm of Light, but there's still like deserts, and there's still, you know, what we would think of as like other types of terrain. They just manifest their sort of magic and look. And moreover, they manifest in, again, just like Planescape, they manifest in the personalities of the people who live there.
Right.
Right. Yep. So like when you live in Akshi, the Realm of Fire, you are more quick-blooded, you are more competitive, you know, you are quicker to anger, but also more ready to prove yourself. You're a sort of natural warrior, that kind of thing. When you're in the realm of Haish, your people from there tend to be more naturally ordered and have more logical, cold, arithmetic-like minds, right? That sort of thing, and on and on and on. So the realms themselves, I think we don't know. Like, there are still big parts of the realms we don't have any information on. Like Haish and Ulgu are basically big, giant unknowns, even to members of the other realms. I think these big pages they give on them in here, which basically they each get like a page, is like the first time we've really gotten significant information on them. So I thought it'd be cool. What's some of our favorite sort of things from the realms? There's like a couple little elements of these that you would want to share with people. Narrative tidbits. So Doug, do you have any narrative tidbits from the little realms, from the realms you want to share?
Yeah, my favorite, and the one that I themed my main army, the Slaves to Darkness, off of is Realm of Metal, which I pronounce as Chamon. So that is mine. The reason I like it is, one, it's much easier for me to imagine what natural like biomes and things like that look like with metal. So like they have metal trees. So you might have an industry where they're like chopping to gain resource as a mining material. Mining might look different, whereas their mining looks like lumberjacking in the Realm of Life, for example. As far as like kind of story tidbits that we were given in the core book, which is the best place to learn about any of these things. I love the fact that their story was people got there and realized immediately, like, this is the best place for civilization to burst because it's so full of industry, because there's tons of minerals and resources in the ground. It's so rich in those things. And so industry all of a sudden blew up, and then a few cataclysmic events happened, and it started a class war. So now you have some clans that are manipulating others as almost as slaves to dig and mine for them. And then the reason I bring that up is because it's something in all this kind of abstract fantasy stuff we can all understand when big business harps on the little guy. But it's a tangible thing to see, like, okay, this could be a great thing, but we see people taking advantage of each other. Not everything was perfect and idyllic. There were still struggles. And when you combine all those things, I think it's a very fascinating area.
Yep. I agree. Chamon is such a cool idea when you think of like this sort of metal infused plane, right? Like clouds seeded with metal, running rivers of sort of like floating liquid mercury and stuff. Like there's a lot of really cool visual elements to that realm. I agree. And obviously that's the other interesting thing about Chamon is it's a huge place for a lot of different races. It's one of the it's one of the realms we've seen explored fairly well. There's a lot of Kharadron Overlord activity there. There are a lot of the sort of free people and order has big civilization there because the industry you mentioned. It's also like one of the seats of power for Tzeentch, right? Because it's got all this powerful magic trapped within it that he likes, and he can shape all this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the Realm Gate Wars, we focused on 3 realms: the life, fire, and metal. And the forces of Nurgle and Khorne were both kicked out of their respective realms that they were hunting after, but Tzeentch was not kicked out of Chaemon. He didn't shut the door. Right. So you're like, that's so cool. He's still there, being a baller.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories from the sort of
Silver Tower. What?
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
One of my favorite stories from like the pre-Age of Chaos, was as civilization is being built, there's like this brilliant, like beyond brilliant architect who architects, I don't remember exactly what his name is. I'd have to go look it up, but whatever, it doesn't matter. He's this, I'll see if I can find it as I'm flipping, but he's like this super brilliant architect who goes and helps in the construction of all of these cities, right? During the Age of Myth. And it turns out, he was so brilliant beyond measure because he was a secret follower of Tzeentch and had been like weaving this like long-term plan of like, runes and things that would allow Tzeentch to gain a foothold into the very foundation stones of the civilization, which I thought was just like, that's Tzeentch, baby. Like that dude, he thinks long-term. Yeah. He was willing to let this one roll. So yes, that's really cool. Tom, what about you? What's a fun realm fact or story or thing you love?
Yeah. So one thing that I love is like I like kind of the nitty gritty of the world. Like I like the like what does life look like, and we got in with Shimon or like you talked about like the slavery and stuff like that. And what struck me this piece of lore, and again, this isn't anything new for anybody that's been around, but for those that haven't read up on Hammerhall. Yeah. Hammerhall is a very fascinating town because it actually sits. It's called the Twin-tailed. It's called the Twin-tailed City, and it sits in this like place, and it's spread over a realm gate across both like Akshi and Giran, so the realm of fire and the realm of life. So there's like two pieces of this city split across 2 different realms. And like it's interesting how like the lava flow from Akshi is like burning away the forest in the realm of life, and what this generates in this bridge town between realms. Like it's just such a fascinating concept. For those that haven't seen it, the second Warhammer quest is based in Hammerhall, so it's just a very fascinating place.
And the cool part about it is they use each other's stuff to succeed through the realm gate. Like they flow lava through the realm gate to burn away the life. Overgrowing life that threatens to like take over the city. And they use the life from Giran to actually like feed all these people living on what's basically a sort of fire, blasted wasteland, right? So it's really cool. Thank you. Yes, Kenny said the guy's name is Valius Meliti. There you go. And yes, I'm sorry, I said he was Age of Myth into Chaos. It's not. He was in Age of Sigmar into that. He was instructive in the cities being raised. I had him too early. Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that.
So post
the Return of the Stormcast. Yeah. Right. But Tzeentch was still rolling. He had this long-term plan going. So yes, super cool. So here's my quick fun things. This book is incredibly instructive of a lot of elements. So first off, it does mention the other gods you talked about in the realm of death, because what's important to know about Shyish for people new to the world is that Shyish contained every culture's version of the afterlife, right? So like everybody's vision of what the afterlife was like was contained within Shyish, and the gods of those afterlives lived there and marshaled over the dead. And like the dead, you basically hang out for an amount of time as a spirit based on the strength of your soul, right? So the stronger you are, the longer you kind of hung out in Shyish before you just faded into nothingness, assumingly the void or whatever. And that's so Nagash goes and consumes all those and basically takes over most of the afterlives. Like he's like,
it's my house.
I am the captain now. I am the captain. And he's, so yeah, I am the afterlife. And so I thought that was really cool. But there was another one. Tom, did you read the Haish page yet?
I have not. No.
Okay. So there's only like one page on Haish, but this is the most instructive page I have read. Like, if you're going to read it, this is page 111, 110 and 111. Highly recommended. First off, because it talks about the nature of the realm of light, which is super cool. It's a really neat page to talk about how logic and clear-mindedness gave way to Slaanesh. Okay, and how like the dark princess's depravity crept into the realm. So it's a neat story about arrogance. But at the same time, the sidebar of the illumination of the gods is super cool. So because it talks about a thing that's sort of always been a D&D concept. And I'm not sure I've ever seen it really directly put this bluntly. It's kind of always how I assumed the gods worked, but this like spells it out directly. The power of the gods in the mortal realms is a two-way street. The more worshipers they have, the more powerful they get, right? Yep. So it's that classic, like this has been a paradigm in many D&D worlds for a long time. And this was sort of how Warhammer, I don't know if there's a previous reference to it being this clear. But so the more people that worship them, the more powerful they get. And
we've seen this with the Chaos Gods.
Sure. Well, that's just the Chaos Gods are sort of beyond time and space and immortal. But yes, they can only sort of inhabit a realm once get in there once they have worshipers, right? That's clear. They are sort of very barred from acting in the real world because of the nature of what they are. Whereas like Alariel can just walk around, right? She can go walk around on the plane of life.
Right.
You know what I mean? But what was cool was it talks about like these gods can cast, and this happens in one of the stories, these gods can sort of cast their consciousness out of their bodies and sort of look through the eyes of their servants. Mm-hmm. So every servant they have is like, you remember the end of The Dark Knight when like Batman sort of violates everybody's civil liberties and spies on everybody through their cell phones, right? Yes. That's how you work. That's what you are to the god you worship. Okay. And so it talks about like Sigmar couldn't see into Haish and had no idea what was going on there until because he had no followers there until he sent like a Stormcast host there. And then like both them being there and then them converting other people there finally gave him vision to understand and see into that realm. It's a really cool sort of story about this.
That is new.
Yeah, like, so it's the Illumination of the Gods, page 111. Highly recommend, because it very much lays out like exactly how the gods rely on their followers and how they work to see and speak to each other and act and use everybody in the world like a walkie-talkie.
So you're saying it's the Kharadron Overlord's fault that Gungi isn't awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Kind of.
Because they bailed on him.
Yeah, like that has direct implications, right? Absolutely. When like the vast majority of Duerden abandon him, right? That has a direct impact on his power and his ability to sort of perceive things and do godly stuff, right? So yeah, super cool. I thought that one was a neat little thing. So that's in the there you go. They explain that when they're explaining Haish. Nice. And Haish has like the coolest imagery. That picture is just super cool. I can't wait till we get those angel elves, dude. I can't, like, the art in that book is going to be amazing. Oh. Okay.
You're saying screw the realm of heavens. That's going to be the real realm of heavens.
It's just got a cool color palette, right? So there you go.
Are you going to use yellows and whites?
Yeah, totally. Like the army has to be like yellows and whites all the way down, right? That's yes. Just it needs to like blind you. Like looking at the army should be pseudo painful. All right. Okay. So now we kind of understand the realms and we understand the big players. I thought it'd be fun to talk about in a little more detail through our favorite stories, which we've already tangentially shared some of throughout these various ages. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Doug, why don't you again, we can jump around here. I don't want to limit us. So age, we know the broad strokes, Age of Myth, Age of Chaos, Age of Sigmar, and now into the Soul Wars. So if we can, pick some stuff, we'll dive deep here at the end into the most recent. So we'll do some Malign Portents stuff and kind of the end of that here separately. But what are some of your favorite sort of cool moments that you feel were big turning points in the narrative or interesting history?
The book Realm Gates, or All Gates, I'm sorry, was huge. So as I said before, Sigmar opened up his gates, starts the Age of Sigmar, and their first goal, as Vince said earlier, there's kind of these little half/pocket realms that kind of they're not really their own full thing. One of them is a really important place called the All Points, or All Point. And basically, this is important because it's a small area where it has a gate to every single realm in it, in a very concentrated place. So if you own it, you can get troops anywhere you want. And so Archaon had basically been controlling that point for some time. And so as far as like pivotal moments in the storyline, Sigmar launches has to be 7-way campaign to try and capture the exit points of all these things. So Archaon can keep the All Point, but he's trying to shut the door on the other side to every other exit to those gates. And so what you got in a story-wise was this like really cool coordinated attack that used the gods that we know of. So Nagash screwed over Stormcast Eternals, Alariel helped them, took on a Nurgle fort. Fire Slayers were involved, Iron Jaws, and what really comes out of that is it moves the story forward in terms of pushing Chaos back. And instead of being like, Chaos is way up here and Sigmar is just starting his battle, it really leveled the playing field in terms of how gods can access. It's kind of like it set the story setting for where we are now, where it's like, this is definitely a two-way fight, a back and forth, not just like a 5 seconds to midnight type thing. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Very nice. All right, Tom, what about you? Hit me with one. If you want to think for a minute, I've
yeah. Let me think for a minute. Sorry, you hit me too quick.
No, that's okay. There's a lot of different cool elements in here. One of the things that's really neat, that's just sort of like it came out in a book, and it's the problem is like trying to pick it out from those books was hard. And it only gets a couple pages in here, but it's a really cool story, and they kind of figure in and out. And it's the God Beasts arise. Yeah. Right. And so like the God Beasts themselves are a cool concept in the realms, that there are these sort of like apex level monsters that are just beyond imagination. Right. To give you an idea, I think the easiest way to show this off is to show this little picture here. Okay. Which this is a hell fort of chaos. This is this his head. So, he's big. He's a big dude. We mentioned one of them earlier with Volcatrix, the mother of salamanders and so on. And there's the God Beast figure in a lot of interesting ways into the story. One of the interesting ones is you mentioned the portals that were conquered and those that weren't.
Yeah.
Right. So one of my favorite stories of one of the portals that wasn't conquered is the portal that's in one of the God Beasts. It's like in his throat. Like his throat is a portal. And like people have tried to chase this monster down. And he's just like, nope, I ain't having that. I ain't about that, son. And so it's just a wandering monster that can eat people and send them between two realms.
Yep.
And he obviously remains out of control. So
that was my favorite one of those stories, actually.
So yeah, the God Beast stuff is really cool. They play into a lot of different stuff, like Archaon conquers one of them, and like they sort of figure into the story here and there. They're just an interesting oddity of the world. They're not a thing we could ever have on the table as like a thing you control.
Right.
But I would be interested to see.
I could see like a realm of battle board.
That's what I could say. They could do a whole board that was a God Beast, like fighting on the back of a God Beast. Could be cool. That'd be a neat thing someday if they ever decide to do that. So, yeah. All right, Tom, do you have one you want to share yet?
Yeah. So it was lore that didn't actually show up in this book, and it's buried in one of the battle tomes that almost no one has. But it's the story of Archaon's attempt to like weed out the Spiderfang grots. I've referred to it before. Where Archaon like goes in, and it's like the War of the Spider, I think is what they call it. And they try to like clean out and burn out the nest of like Spittlegate Spittlegate, and Archeon doesn't like kind of succeeds, but does not succeed. Like there's just too many spiders. It's in the Everett, and they dig away and just get into other like they get away into the realm web that's being created. Yeah,
that's
nice.
legit.
Yeah,
nice.
It's one of my favorite stories, just because it's like Archeon's like, haha, and they're like, nah, we're cool.
I will say that I think destruction armies have the best stories. Like generally speaking, they're just fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. There's when we get to the Malign Portent story, there's a destruction army that figures into sort of the end of that story quite heavily in an interesting way. All right, Doug, do you have another one you want to share? I've got one more I want to touch on in these age sort of stories.
As far as important moments and things like that, when they got Galmaraz back, I almost said Grimnir. When they got the hammer Galmaraz, at some point during Chaos's push into the mortal realms, Tzeentch tricked Sigmar into chucking his hammer, which is weird because we've never actually been given the lore explanation of like he doesn't have the Jedi power that like pulls the lightsaber back or anything like that. He just hucked it, thinking he was throwing it at Archeon, and it was just kind of lost. And that's kind of the breaking moment when Sigmar was like, "This isn't working.
I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, this is just silly." So it was cool. It was a good moment because it showed how important that item was. It broke him as a leader, and then he wasn't expecting it to find it again. But when they did by accident, in kind of their initial beachhead into the mortal realms, it became priority number one. And so Quest for Galmaraz is a really great book where they're trying to get it back.
Nice. Yeah, I love how they find that, as you mentioned, it does become priority number one.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, my toy. I want my toy back. I'm God. Get me my toy.
Well, it's cool. It's really cool because like the way they describe it is no chaos people can look at it without going blind.
Right.
But they built something around it to kind of channel its power.
They've got it locked up like a mother box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a little nuclear fusion thing. Or like, it's awesome.
And then he immediately, of course, gives it to the Celestin Prime, right? Who he had the sort of Stormcast that he had prepared specifically for this purpose.
Karl Franz.
It's not. Stop it. Stop.
I would love that so much. If that was just like a one-word like throwaway thing in a book, that'd be so amazing.
Yeah, it would be. It won't happen, but it would be amazing.
No, it won't.
All right. So the one more I want to talk about is this. I think that there was some consternation over a lot of this story not existing when AoS first launched, but I'm actually really glad it didn't. And let me tell you why. Because one of the things that has allowed to happen over the past 3 years of real time is this story has been able to evolve organically in a lot of very interesting ways through, narrative campaigns and events and through like storytelling and through individual books. I actually like that we took our time with this sort of story and built it brick by brick, as opposed to just like sending Phil Kelly into a room and saying, write 3 novels worth of background and just like chunk it all out at once. And then we're just going to sort of put it in a book and right. Instead that like we got to participate in a lot of this. And one of the ways that we got to participate, sometime back, year and a half ago, whatever it was in the founding of like the 3 sort of great cities, right? So if you want to read more about this, it's on page like 54 and 55 under the heading "The Seeds of Hope." But it's about it's about these cities that get built, right? So you got like Phoenicium and these kinds of things. But specifically, the one that I love is when they talk about like the Greywater fastness, which I have a particular predilection for, since I just built a whole army meant to be set in that city. And it is a city of like fusillade and cannon and gunpowder and industry. Yeah. It is. And so the part of this story that happens is that like throughout the mortal realms, there's like raw magic coalesced into disparate substances that are known collectively as realm stone. So every realm has its own like realm stone version. It's coalesced magic. And it manifests differently, right, in these different realms. And that guy, Valius Militi, the secret chaos worshiper, right, of Tzeentch, basically makes the leap of suggesting that, like, we can use this as nuclear power.
Yeah.
Right? And they do. And so they get together, like, the Iron Swelled engineers and the Elven enchanters and everybody in the Greywater Reach. And they, like, boom, when they tap this, it really is like turning on a fusion engine, right? So, like, people who were previously relying on, like, candles and coal suddenly have nuclear fusion at their disposal, right? That's the leap in technology.
Yeah.
And so, like, immediately there's just, like, tons of power, and they're just, like, making these weapons of war, and just this city springs overnight to the point where Alariel's like, whoa, hey, well, hold on a minute. They're just, like, clearing forests with massive machines, just like just clear cutting and building massive edifices of stone by tapping this power. The specific line is, trees were felled by the 100, and the region's resources were plundered to fuel the lightning-fast growth of the Greywater fastness. The children of Alariel looked on in horror at this rapacious industry. It's great. So, yeah, I love the Greywater fastness. It's like, it's all the worst elements of humanity just turned into, like, the focused industry of advancement.
Yeah, you missed that. Despite the conflict that came, yet still the fastest rose, a towering stronghold of ironclad walls, roaring furnaces, sorceress wards, and lowering cannon batteries that dominated the region all around.
Yep. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. It's an awesome thing. The Phoenicians Story is also worth reading, as it's a really cool story of this entire city that had been trapped in solidified amber, basically, during the Age of Myth. And then, like, the Phoenix Temple and some free people rediscover it. And then they call forth their Phenai, and all the Phenai do a little magic parrot dance, basically.
Phenai dance.
They do
the birds of paradise.
They do their, like, birds of paradise dance, and like make the amber go away and reclaim the whole city, which was, like, perfectly preserved in amber. So
awesome.
There's a lot of neat little stories about all these things, and, like, all those cities came about because of the results of the campaign that Order won, right? So I think that's cool that shaped it. If Chaos had won, we would have had a very different couple of pages here and a very different shaping to the nature of civilization.
Yeah, there wouldn't be all those cannons.
That would be really sad.
Well, it's interesting. So that was the Seasons of War campaign when after it all came up.
Yeah,
and people were really, I think, upset at first because, like, it was an Order victory, like, way overload. Like, then nobody else kind of came close. But at the same time, their next move as a company in terms of releasing things was super smart, where they released Tzeentch. Right. And his whole thing is that these nice new cities are springing up, and it's subterfuge, and, like. Yep. Even them dominating 100% played into this grander narrative of, like, now the enemy is the enemy within. And I don't know, I thought it was really cool.
It was super cool, especially when they I'm sure this, like, little story here about this guy is a retcon. Like, that is to say, I don't think when they had this original concept of this fastness that they realized this was going to be a thing. But, like, the city itself was a result of a Tzeentch worshiper who gave this power over so they would build civilization so he could set himself in it, right? Like, the dude, I've said it like 10 times, but the dude plays a long game, right? So I love that, like, even though Order had this overwhelming victory, you're right, they managed to sow these seeds of, like, it was all Tzeentch just back there going, yes.
He's like, go on.
His little bird fingers. I can just say, I agree. That's way to go. Way to go, buddy. There you go. Plotting it out. Okay. So, so that's kind of, I think there's a lot to unpack. I mean, obviously, like I said, we could go forever in here. What I love about the book too, is that they sort of unpack the actual narrative in lots of different ways. So they have kind of the broad history, but then they also have the breakdown by the realms, and they cover stuff. They have the breakdown by the races, and they cover more stuff. So they don't just, like, hit you with a never-ending timeline.
Right.
It's the framing devices they use continues to change, and the POV, right? Yeah. on the like Daughters of Cain page, by the way, right here, there's a wonderful little story about Velen Candlemar, who's clearly like a free guild halberdier, and they're fighting a bunch of Iron Jaws, and he's watching these witch elves work. Like he's kind of behind the lines, and he's watching these witch elves work, and he's like watching this graceful beauty, and he's clearly like, "Oh, I'm into these chicks," right? Like he's digging it. He's all about it. Like if you kind of read it, he's digging it. And so then like they're, they talk about how like the brutes can't raise a hand without one of the girls like slicing off, like raising a weapon, and the girls will just slice off the hand of the brute that has the weapon. And then one of the daughters gets like booted by one of the brutes back next to him. Okay. Like she gets kicked like 30 feet back to him. And he goes to help her up because he's a nice guy. And that's what you do when the other humans. And so the daughter of Cain like smiles, stabs him in the heart, and then stands up and walks back to the fight, just murders him just completely without regard or remorse or pause. Just like, oh, thanks. You're dead. Okay, back to killing these other people. Like, the point is, Order's a big tent party. Here are the rules for joining Order. Here are the rules for joining Order. 1, don't be chaos. Okay. Yep. 2, breathe. That's it. You got to breathe. Okay. And 3, like buildings. That's it. If you can check those 3 boxes, if you are a non-chaos breathing person who enjoys buildings, you're in. Like, that's it. That is the litmus test.
But if you like tents, you're out. Tribes?
Correct.
Long houses, if they're temporary, you're out.
Not long house, you're in. That's okay. That's still a structure.
But what if it's temporary, like a tribal longhouse?
It's probably still close enough. They're willing to like again.
Gorka Morka was hanging out for a while. That's true.
Yeah, it's a pretty big tent. All right. So that's a good point. Somebody said Sylvaneth might be destruction then. Well, Sylvaneth like tree houses. So I'm calling it. They're good.
Just a tree, which is their house.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. They live in tree houses. So I'm saying they're in. Like they had like when they filled out the 3 checkmark questionnaire of would you like to be in Order? They were like, do you like buildings? Do tree houses count? And I was like, yeah, it's close enough, man. You're good. Come on in. It's fine. You got the other 2, so we're good. All right. Okay. So let's dig a little into malign importance here as we wrap this, as we get to the end here. So Doug, you want to take us through what you see as like the big elements of malign importance, especially as we get towards sort of the end and the Necroquake and the relevant part that led to the Soul Wars right now.
Totally. Yeah. So what Soul Wars is kind of from a top-down view is the idea that while Order and Chaos have been duking it out from in our real world the last 3 years, Nagash has been planning and plotting his big move to shut down both sides and take control for himself. The idea was basically to conduct a giant spell/ritual that's going to raise all the dead in all the realms, which would give you an immediate colossal army everywhere, which then you would kill the living. All the living are now dying, their souls going down to Shyish, making him stronger. So it's kind of this perpetual motion machine of just like power. And to do that, he started construction of a grand pyramid. And as Vince mentioned earlier, every realm has a kind of a specific resource to it. And the one in Shyish is often called grave sand. It's just solidified death magic towards the end of the realm. And so he started during the whole, it has at least been multiple centuries of realm gate wars and all that stuff. He said there's a grand project of having a line of ants like skeletons going out to the end, or line of skeletons like ants, sorry, going out to the end, collecting 1 grain of grave sand, bringing it back. And he's been doing that for darn near forever. And with that has constructed these huge black pyramids. One of them is more monolithic than the others. And it's built precisely for the reason of channeling and funneling and consolidating all death magic. So basically, he starts this ritual, And so the core book kind of gives you a nice overview of what's happening, and the actual novel Soul Wars by Josh Reynolds really fleshes out the details of it. As he's bringing the Realm Stone in from the edges of the realm to the center, he's kind of disrupting how magic works in the realms. This is where people start having weird dreams and visions, and this is all those short stories, the Malign Portents ones, they're the effects of what he's doing and what he's kind of screwing with. So all eyes in the realms are like, what the heck's going on in Shyish over time? And he assembles his pyramid. Do you want me to just keep going? What happened to it?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Let's go all the way through.
So he builds his giant pyramid. It's a giant pyramid upside down. So the point faces the ground, hovering
So
above
the rats couldn't get in.
Exactly.
That's the idea.
So no one sneaks in, which then promptly someone sneaks in. And
Of course.
The narrator, they did.
yeah.
They did.
Basically,
yes.
what happened was all the Skaven have seen that there's this big collection of Realm Stone in one location, which to them is just like a pot of gold. So they launch a whole bunch of crusades to go get the Black Pyramid. The idea being they'll sneak inside and basically drive it away.
Yeah, yes. They're going to like, yes, this is a heist. All right,
Exactly.
all right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in. We're going to get all the Realm Stone. We're going to get out. And so they're like, what's notable about this Skaven is that they can tunnel through reality. Like they make their own. They don't rely on the realm gates, right? Like they have. If you look at the map that's presented in the book, you'll notice that like Blight, basically the Skaven home demi-plane, has these little tendrils that reach out to all the worlds. And so the Skaven actually, like through the Warp Nulvern Lords and actual legitimate tunnelers, dig through sort of the magical Ethereum or whatever that connects these realms and get into everywhere. Like rats in the walls. Yeah,
and it's super unreliable. That's why they're not like auto win as a faction.
Right.
Like one of them dug into the bottom of an ocean and drained the ocean and flooded and killed all the rats.
Yes,
which is a short
literally
story.
drained an ocean.
Yes.
Yes.
So Skaven managed to get inside, trying to steal away all the Realm Stone. They got inside, and because it's like solidified magic, it warped with their senses. They couldn't really navigate it. And Nagash began his grand ritual to start raising all the dead. But now it's corrupted by chaos because they were screwing with stuff inside of it, as well as just having chaos like forces inside of it when it starts. Really messes with it. So basically the end effect is huge shockwave of energy goes out. And it really sets off kilter how magic functions in the realms. The pyramid begins to spin. It starts sucking in all of the afterlives, or several of the afterlives that mortals create. So he's basically eating death itself, kind of, and kind of concentrating it to a single point, which is called the nadir. I believe how you pronounce that. Is that
right?
Right. Okay. It's just like a singularity of death.
Yeah. Quick note about that upside down pyramid.
Yeah.
The reason he built it upside down wasn't just so people couldn't sneak in. It was so he could build a drill bit.
Yep.
Right?
Yes,
like legitimately, dude built a drill bit that's like the size of it. It talks about how he looks like an ant compared to his pyramid. Even Mighty Nagash is dwarfed by this thing he's built. And when he starts his ritual, it spins. Like he literally spins it like a top for a drill bit to like go into Shyish. Like that's his plan.
Yep. He
made a giant drill. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's legit. And so with that, he creates a kind of a focal point for all death magic.
Yep.
His plan kind of works. It is screwed up, not certainly as strong as he wanted it to be. Dead do rise a lot of places. That's actually why we have the Night Haunt release, is that a ton of spirits and geists and all those things popped up. But it didn't give him the absolute control and power that he wanted to have initially. And it really just destroyed his city, because as this thing is spinning, it's going berserk. It kind of got chaotic because it wasn't working properly. There's some other things going on, like some Deepkin lured a whole orc Wa to the front door. So his city's falling apart behind him. He's got an army in front of him. He's kind of hard pressed. So things aren't working very well. When this thing hits the earth, the shock wave, if you remember like the movie The Matrix, when the helicopter hits the building and there's that huge wave of bubble that kind of like goes out, that's exactly what's happening across all the realms.
Right.
This is actually what makes the expansion set Malign Sorcery. that magic is so thrown off kilter, and then it so saturates the air that usually magic, when you cast a spell, like say you did Foot of Gork or something like that, a green mystical foot would come and stomp on the enemy and then dissipate. But now that foot just kind of sticks around and keeps stomping around, and all the spells that we have are just spells that you would normally cast that would dissipate, that just because there's so much magic in the air and things have been so gone awry, they don't dissipate, they just kind of keep going. And so that's the Necroquake, is that big bubble going out there, which is the coolest name ever. Like if you had to like name a band or something.
Necroquake, yeah, absolutely. That's my Swedish death metal band.
Exactly, yes. And so the way the story kind of wraps up with us currently, as far as like the overarching narrative, the plan didn't work quite as well. Nagash still has become a major player in terms of having a lot of death armies everywhere. It's just not what he needed to do the swift kill that he was planning on. And he has permanently screwed up magic as far as we can tell, and kind of ruined everyone's afterlives. So there's not a whole lot to look forward to after death at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately.
What remains to be seen, though, is just how much it screws up factions that rely on manipulating souls. So, like, he hates the Deepkin and he hates the Stormcast Eternals because they take what's rightfully his.
Right.
And so we don't have a whole lot of stories yet of Stormcast who are trying to be reforged after all of this. Because we know
especially since the Guardians of the Forge are now out and about trying to fix the reforging process, right? That is the Sacrosanct Chamber. They were traditionally the Guardians of the Forge.
Totally. And so all these things happening is screwing up their processes for keeping Stormcast going. So instead of being at the Forge making people, Sigmar's like, you guys are way more useful now in the field trying to research a cure for Stormcast losing parts of their soul every time they get reforged. Like we talked about, it's an imperfect process that Grugny made. So don't be at home working on the Forge, get out in the field trying to figure out a solution. So that's actually why the Sacrosanct Chamber was opened, and we see them on the tabletop. They're actually super uniquely suited to working against death and chaos armies, kind of the more ethereal, non-straightforward physical things.
Yeah, we called it the Ghostbusters, absolutely.
Exactly.
There is a worthwhile line regarding the Necroquake. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Do you have the page from the new main book? Because
I don't. I know what you're talking about, but yes.
I have it. Okay. Yeah. So it ends with, the Nadir like crushes in and blah blah blah, vampires and liches, and any who spoke of it had years stolen from their lifespan, hungry, cursed. Okay. A new evil had come to the mortal realms, as inescapable as time itself, and with it a new era of death ascended. Yeah. And that new evil is like capitalized? Or not, no, it's not. I'm sorry. It's not. But the question is what is the thing that Nagash has woken up?
Sure.
Because the implication here, I would argue, is that this whole like Nadir corrupted chaos death stuff has undone something else.
Oh, like, we have theories.
Yes, there are theories here, but there's I think Nagash has gotten in over his head.
Could be, because they talk about how he can't even be in the Black Pyramid for very long anymore in the Nadir because it's so tainted with chaos now.
Right.
All right, which leads us to our final segment, which is we make crazy predictions about the future of the story in the mortal realms. It's
wildly.
That's right. It's wild speculation time. So
my favorite.
I would like to begin with, if that's okay, with a wild speculation that if people want to read more about, you can turn to page 78 of the core book, wherein there is a sidebar with a member of the Hallowed Knights who is asking about why do we have to die over and over again, right? Like it's basically one of the Hallowed Knights complaining about the fact that they get killed and reforged over and over again. And so then this Lord Castellan is like, don't doubt the God King. He has a plan, blah, blah, blah. They have this conversation. And the end of the conversation basically is something like this. if Sigmar has to secure the realm gates in order to bind the mortal realms together, he's using each as a link and as part of a chain. The more we fortify, the more the forces of order harden that link. The more the chain contracts. And so basically what his personal theory, again, this is told from the point of view of a person, right? So we have this whole book is unreliable narrators, like left and right.
Yeah.
But he says perhaps if those chains contract enough, the realms will come together as one, forming a single great realm, freed from the scourge of chaos. And the other guy's like, all right, never mind. That sounds like something worth fighting for. And he's like back into it. So wild speculation, they pull two realms, like it succeeds to a point at some point in the future, and two of the realms smash into each other in some semi-permanent way. They're clearly not going to reunite everything and undo the whole thing and say, okay, it's one contiguous plane now, but it'd be a fun event to smash two of them together and get a weird new middle territory that's like a mixing of the two, right? So you'd have like, what would happen is you'd have these ends that would still be more or less representative of their plane, but you'd have some new middle ground that's some crazy halfy, right?
That's awesome.
Well, we do know, like we've had rumored before, like to reaffirm this, that like the center of the old world, like the world at core, there's this hope of like as victory is secured, or I forget where we read this, like it coalesces. Do you remember this, Vince?
Yeah, the more order that wins, the more the more that piece in the
like
center
it
of
flares
Space
to
Station
life.
Sigmar flares to life, but they're also using it to power a lot of their stuff, so they drain it and build it simultaneously.
Yeah, so like the question we like one crazy idea was that maybe this is an intermediary period to get back to a world.
Right. Does he eventually build an actual world?
Does Sigmar, by reining everything in, reining all the like rechaining the winds of magic, does he recreate a new old world?
Sure.
Made in his image. In his vision of what he thinks that new order, like what the world should be, an idealized version of it. Like, is the Age of Sigmar? Is it this intermediary part where we are reforging the world?
Nice.
I don't know. Like, and that was something that Vincent, you had called out a year and a half ago from lore.
Yeah.
That may be where we're going, and this seems to point to that as well.
Yep.
Interesting.
All right. So there's my first wild speculation. Who would like to go next?
I'm gonna go ahead.
I'll go for
it. No, you're.
I was
you're
gonna say, I think the bubble, the outward effects of the necroquake are going to be the thing that breaks Slanesh loose from his chains.
Yeah.
Because you got to imagine he's constantly pulling at them, and then when this huge surge of power smashes in, I think that's kind of. I mean, it's not as big of a point as yours, but it is the idea that once this god is unchained, what happens at that point? Because his little slice of chaos has kind of been somewhat dominated by the others in the realm of chaos. Not completely, but he's been pushed back a lot. So he has a lot of ground to keep up with. But at the same time, how much obsession and decadence is coming back to the realms as we're beginning civilization, and then obviously all warriors trying to hone their skills, those kinds of things have been feeding him in terms of what he thrives on. And what that'll look like. And so what that could look like is he gets busted forth from his chains. Maybe we know from one of the short stories that when a soul comes out of him, it kind of sits in a kind of an intermediate area. There's a story where a soul's just sitting there, and it's like Marathi and Malarian having a conversation over it. And that kind of stuff. Yeah, so just imagine like if he busts free and there's some souls there that he just takes, doesn't necessarily eat, but forms into another image, seeing what they've been doing. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm jumping straight ahead here.
Yeah,
because I agree. She is going to break free.
Yep.
Much like Queen, they want to break free. She wants to break free. Now, importantly, where is Slanesh at the moment?
In between light and dark.
Yep.
Yes, but more specifically, in something that looks like the mortal realms. None of the other chaos gods can actually themselves manifest into the realms. When she breaks out, she's going to be basically for real in the realms. Okay. So I would like to, with that as a statement, I am going to read you this quick thing here.
Okay.
This is a sidebar on page 166 under Slaanesh. And there they were, coming through the Breadman's Quarter, the Seekers, a riot of color in the gloom, forcing their way through the streets in a carnival of blood and violence. She could make out fabulous knights charging atop serpentine bipeds, which is not what Seekers are,
Right.
at all. Okay. You could say, well, maybe they mean Hellstriders because but Hellstriders wear very little armor. I would not describe them as fabulous knights, but okay. Let's say it's just Hellstriders. Bladed chariots of gold cutting down the Grey Guard, which I have never seen a chariot in any team that's ever in any of the art or anything ever done in gold. Okay.
Right.
And this is the most important line. And silk-clad courtesans dancing through the carnage, each wearing what seemed to be hideous masks and mock claws. She wafted more incense from her brazier, blah, 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 blah. Humans, you remember what's their name? Fire thrower dudes who worship Tzeentch. Why can't I think of them?
Acolytes?
Acolytes. Thank you. Yeah.
Acolytes. Yeah.
Yeah, the Acolytes. This is a new, I'm reading a new unit right here on the page.
Yeah.
Courtesans, right? Where they have these daemonette, just like the Acolytes wear bird masks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Those are human faces underneath there. It's just bird masks. And use those sickle claw weapons. The courtesans use these sort of Slaaneshi claw. Yes, mock weapons and wear these sort of wear masks, just like the Mask used to dance around with.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Boom. There it is. So when the effect of Slaanesh being there actually in the mortal realms, I suspect is going to push mortals into worship in a more real way. Slaanesh will not have as much access to her demonic forces.
Yeah.
And so we'll turn to the lust of mortals who are all around in the realms closer to than anything else. And the release will be a big mortal release of Slaanesh. So there you go. There's my wild prediction for both the narrative and the Slaanesh release. It's a twofer. All right.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It makes me wonder if they'll play around, if we might get our true first kind of gold faction in that. Okay. And what I mean by that is, and I saw somebody suggest this, and it's a genius idea, is what if Daughters of Cain showed up as allies for Slaanesh?
Okay. I mean, they really hate Slaanesh.
They do, but we're talking about corrupted.
Okay.
Corrupted daughters.
Sure, because a lot of them, especially the snakes and the Canary, have the influence of Slaanesh upon their soul, hence their wings and snake bodies.
And allied means that they could bring them in without actually changing Slaanesh itself, like the Slaanesh allegiance.
Sure.
And so that would allow them to dip across factions.
Okay. So corrupted daughters falling, but when Slaanesh explodes back into the realms and is able to re-exert her influence, right? He is able to call out to some of the soul that's still contained within some of the daughters, his own essence, right? And pull them back into the fold.
Yeah, and they could even do something as weird as doing Daughters of Cain parentheses Melusai and Canary or keyword it. If they're playing in this space, potentially they could say because all of those are just keywords, right. And so they could actually pinpoint and narrow down which keywords can come over. So, again, this is just wild, rampant speculation.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
That's what the point of this is.
Yeah. So my fun speculation, I'm going to tap into a called shot that I had in our January show. When we before we knew anything about Malign Portents, Vince and I did a show just what do we think this is, and what are our weird called shots? And I suggested that the Malign Portents would end with the birth of a god.
Sure.
I at that point had said that Malign Portents would end with the birth of a new chaos god, and it would be a god based on fear and all that. Hence the Malign Portents and all the fear and stuff like that was showing up. because there was nothing that kind of met that psychological characteristic of the Chaos Gods.
Right.
Now I'm wondering if I was like, I got part of that puzzle, in that I think that we have the birth of a god. And if you'll remember this, once we got the Malign Portents book, we saw in the Skaven section, the Skaven appropriately identify the Malign Port. So if you look in when each of the Chaos Gods were fearing or reflecting on what was happening with Malign Portents, and when it went to this with the Horned Rat, he recognized that someone else was ascending to godhood. In that lore blurb, he identified that that was happening and that he was going to be robbed. Let me see if I can find the passage. And what I'm anticipating is that what we've seen with the Necroquake is that there will be a new god emerge. And originally I thought that would be a Chaos God, and now I'm wondering if it's instead going to be not a Chaos God. But another death god
makes sense for them. Well, or it could be another death, or it could be a destruction god. Like this force that the spells themselves are very destruction oriented, right?
Oh yeah,
that's sort of rampant destroyers across the realms. And we know that destruction is going to be teed up in 2019 as getting a lot of focus, right? They sort of mentioned that previously. So it could give rise to a completely new destruction force and a new god to represent them. A very unusual take if it was manifested from magic, because the current forces of destruction are all very I would call them tangible and meaty, right? They're just muscle, right? Yeah. But this could be a very different type of destruction, right? Especially if it was coalesced out of magic.
So here's the Horned Rat passage. It says his whiskers twitched again and sending rippling auras of green black energy cascading across the skies of the mortal realms. There was something coming. Its rippling in the small griddled miasma of Blight City was unmistakable. It was the touch of death, or rather, undeath, laced through with the arid tang of the desert tomb. Something that sought to contend for the same power he himself would rightfully claim. A rival. The great Horned Rat curled his lip, the glow of warp fire and infernal industry glinting from colossal chisel-like teeth that would sever realities. No rival would take his place on the ladder. No would-be godling would disrupt his ascension. He was the Lord of Pestilence, of vermin, endless, starving wastelands, and he had suffered too long the sneers of the four for far too long. If the cosmos was to turn to utter ruin, it would be him and him alone that would ensure it. And so, he senses that there is someone coming. The Malign Portents aligns with the coming of another one that was going to step in to take his place on the ladder. And arguably, he's talking about of ascending to the Chaos Godhood. And so, I still wonder if we don't have the birth of a new Chaos God. Maybe not. But maybe it's one aligned with death, because that's something we have Nurgle as life, but we don't have a true death-oriented Chaos God.
Interesting. Okay.
So, anyways, I'm wondering if I wasn't totally wrong, but I also wasn't totally right with that call back then, because I think that's the trajectory that we're on with this Necroquake.
Neat. I dig it. All right. Any other wild speculation points we want to make before we call it a night?
No, that was my big one. I mean, right. I think other factions are going to play into that. I want to see Gorka Morka come back.
Yep.
Not necessarily as a model, but as a presence in the stories. But yeah, that's about it.
All right. Well, we know there are going to be big times ahead, clearly, as this happens. And what I love is that we have seen this continuing evolution movement of the narrative. I really hope that continues. I want to see cities rise and fall, powers rise and fall, armies rise and fall, right? I want to see this continued movement in the narrative. To me, it has been the most exciting thing. And I hope it just keeps up, frankly. Yeah, all right. Well, Doug, it is a pleasure as always. If you are not subscribed to Mr. 2+ Stuff, I don't know what you're doing with your life. I imagine you are, but just on the off chance you're not, his channel will be linked down below. If you like digging into lore and learning background, Doug has an absolute metric ton of lore deep dives. Sir, you put in the work. Okay, that's what's impressive here. do not underestimate the work that Doug does in putting together these incredible lore deep dives where he will really attack an individual element from all angles, cover their whole story, really get you into it. So if you don't like reading, like me, then Doug's channel is perfect for you because he does the hard work for you and then summarizes it and concisely gives you the whole story. Easy peasy, as well as a bunch of other stuff. I mean, I don't want to limit it. You have a lot of other content. And so check it out for that and beyond. And so, yeah, that'll be linked down there below. But as always, Doug, appreciate it, buddy. Of course, we're going to have you back again in the future. You know that.
Appreciate it. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. And to all of you out there, thank you very much for watching. As always, we appreciate it. And we'll see you next Wednesday.